hello, and welcome to the show. On this week's Downhill Chaos, I decided to use some GTA 4 cars that have been modded into GTA 5. We start with the Hakumai. I think that is how it's pronounced. A car I don't particularly remember this one from GTA 4, but I thought I would give it a try. Now this replaces the Fugitive, I believe. I was trying to see if I could get a flamethrower going on from the back. I couldn't, sadly. Now, the immediate thing that I noticed with these cars, after the last sort of couple of weeks, these were much nicer and easier to drive. Admittedly, the hiker does get completely and utterly splattered, but I had many difficulties with the Ferrari, with that thing oversteering and spinning out, the Challenger. I had a lot of problem with that thing rolling over. The Monster Panto, well, that was just so wide, it didn't really fit on the course. But these cars were immediately much more controllable, much nicer and easier to drive. I mean, mistakes were still made when I carried a little bit too much speed, just slightly clipped the outside wall there, and that was all it took, just to throw you off course enough so that you end up carrying too much speed through the next part, hit the wall, and sort of, yeah, go flying and bouncing around that particular area. And that is an area that I would see a few problems with this car. Next attempt, I was a lot more confident going down the first section and trying to carry some speed. The thing is, if you slightly corrected at the wrong time, this is what happens. I slightly overcorrected, and we missed the landing of the jump and soared down the mountain. Got the car a little bit stuck. Did eventually sort of free it. The rear bumper got caught up. I don't quite know how I reversed over it because the rear wheels were stuck in the air, but never mind. We got ourselves free. Always trying to make sure you get it stopped down for this turn one is interesting, but these vehicles had some decent brakes. The bushes were, well, being as the GTA 5 bushes like to be. Amazingly, they all managed to stay on the course, which is quite a surprise. But again, I got it in the air just before we took off for that little bit of a jump. The car was starting to twist, and yeah, once it's in the air, don't have a huge amount of time to do much with it. So this would be a bit of a problem area. Just carrying a little bit too much speed. I've never got that much air time of that particular section. We get a roll, we kind of get a bounce roll off the landing. Do get it all back under control again eventually, but it was running just a tiny little bit too wide, and it was picking the back of the car up, and then I couldn't slow it down in time, and it went over the edge of that hill again. A peculiar place to be having problems with cars, but there we go. Yeah, as I said, I was being braver down the opening section. However, being a road car, it was quite a low road car, this one. That time there, as I was coming across the bumps, as I was slightly off the course almost, it was the back of the car that dragged on the floor and caused some issues. Yeah, it was one of the lower road cars I think we've had. The final jump, I thought I was being a bit too brave. Really, with this car, it was dealing quite well with the course. Again, as I said, a lot more confidence in these. I thought I could try it flat out. It doesn't work. No, still no. Certainly none of the decently fast cars have been able to take that jump flat out. Later on, we got very lucky bouncing it on two wheels. I was pretty sure that one there was going to have a big accident. Somehow managed to all gather it up and still make the turn, which was quite impressive. Tried slowing it down only a tiny bit. That didn't quite work either. It was closer. It needs a little bit more of a brake though than that one there. The bush did stop me from having a very big accident. The magical stopping bushes, but yeah, we got ourselves in a little bit of trouble. That time when I went on the brakes, I actually lost the back end slightly and it started sliding. I recovered it all the way down towards the escape road, but the front end was twisting as we hit a slight jump, and again it was gone. I could recover it without sort of tumbling wildly out of control, but the spin, of course, has completely ruined the run. Yeah, I mean, it's just little things with this car. There were no real major problems. This was a later run, again, showing the road car having problems across some bumpy terrain. The back end started bouncing. And as by the time I'd realised what was going on and fought it for control, it was too late, and we were in the wall. That's one of the characteristics of this course. Really, once things do start going wrong, they tend to go wrong quite spectacularly. You have very little in the way of time to try and save it. Took a few attempts, of course, to get a decent run out of this car. But yeah, it was a very nice vehicle to drive. In all honesty, down here, you did have to be aware. It is a relatively low road car, and the ride height did cause issues. You can see just how low it is around here. One of the lower cars. If you exclude the sports cars and supercars, yeah, this thing is damn low. to the ground, so you did have to be careful with the problems that go with that. Scraping on the floor. On this particular run, we ended up taking a little bit of a jump around the hairpin. Not really the opportune line, I'll be honest, around that particular corner, but we've made it around safely. This section is always rather evil. You think you can carry more speed over the jump. I mean, you can carry more speed through that corner and over the jump. Problem is, if you do, you end up overshooting on the landing and you'll never make the next corner, so you have to end up taking the jump quite slowly. Again, down here, you really want to make sure you get the car settled. It did like to go up onto 2 wheels. It's just that bit of terrain wanted to make the Hakumi go on its side, but it was perfectly controllable when it did. Again, you carry good speed over that fast jump and get it all back under control. The bushes weren't too bad for this car. I could run it down the foliage line and it wouldn't have too many issues with spinning out. Again, getting a little bit on its side around the second to last corner. We're flat out around the final turn and it is across the line for the Hakumi. Managed to miss all of the trees except for that one. Couldn't quite get it stopped in time before going off the edge there. But yeah, it was a nice change driving this from the cars that we had last week that were very awkward to drive and had their various issues down this course. This was a much more sensible, much easier car. I mean, sure, when you try to push cars really hard down here, you can get some spectacular crashes, but on the whole, yeah, quite a lot of confidence with this car to really push it. Up next, it is the Tamper. We have a classic muscle car for you. Now, we shouldn't have any problem with ride height with this car, as we can see. There is plenty of ride height in this one. The hikers are being a pain, as per normal. They really do like getting in the way of these opening. Whenever I'm not doing kind of the opening shot of a car, they never seem to spawn at the top. Or it's very rare they seem to spawn at the top of the course. Every time I do the opening shot of one, they're there. But yeah, again, another muscle car. This one replaced the Ruiner, if I have remembered correctly. I believe that is the car that it replaced. Again, it was another car that I had quite a lot of confidence coming through the first section. I mean, this is on the very first run, and I could really chuck the car around there. And if we did happen to have a wheel over the edge of the course, unlike with the Hakumi where the back end of the car would scrape on the road, this thing had more than enough ride height for you to get away with it. The first big crash would come further down the run. I made it almost all the way to the bottom on the first attempt. I tried the Brave and we got it a little bit wrong coming up to the jump, and then yeah, if you get it wrong on the takeoff for that jump, you're definitely going to have a very big accident. We go for a tumble, we get some scratches, lose the front fender, but I was quite impressed with this car on the first run with it, as again it was another car you could really push quite hard through this course, and it was okay. But we're not expecting record-breaking times from these cars. They're not going to have the speed, the power that you get from the sports and supercars. Next attempt, I tried it flat out over over that jump there, and yeah, we kind of ended up in the slow-mo bushes. They're very annoying, the slow-mo bushes. Another incident of running a wheel up the banking and fighting for control, kind of eventually sort of save the car around there. As I said, you can get away with quite a lot with this car and manage to recover it. Unfortunately, I pushed my luck too hard. Slow-mo bushes lost all of our momentum as we went over the edge of the jump. The hiker gets incredibly lucky and then continues as if nothing has happened. When we tumbled face first off of that one, yeah, the back of the car got caught in the bush, lost all speed as we were about to leave the jump, so it kind of just nose-dived off the cliff. Got to be careful of those dastardly bushes. Coming to take the hairpin, tried to take a tight line. Yeah, that didn't quite work either. Just sort of picked the front of the car up and spun it around very, very quickly. Honestly, this really wasn't a particularly difficult car to drive down here, though. It was a very, very forgiving vehicle. You could get away with a lot in this car. You could really push your luck through sections, and it would be okay with it. You could recover it with a couple of wheels off the course even, and get it back together again. I could take a lot more speed over these jumps than we'd seen from cars as well. What I just did then with the back end scraping along the ground, or it would have been scraping along the ground with a lot of cars. In this, we have more than enough ride height to get away with it. Yeah, I mean, as I said, there is not quite the speed there of the sports and the supercars that have gone down here. But it was lovely and easy to drive. This time we make it around the hairpin without causing issues. Being a rear-wheel drive, relatively powerful muscle car, you could get it sliding. You could lose a little bit of time trying to get the power down. The slight lack of traction that you perhaps get from this means you could lose a little bit of time. The back end did jump up through that particular corner, which is never a good thing. Remember to avoid all of the bushes around here. Don't want to run wide through that particular corner, as I found out. I mean, it deals with the landings so nicely compared to the cars that we've seen. Loads and loads of vehicles are kind of bouncing up on the landings that causes all sorts of issues. But this not a problem. It does ever so slightly there, but I took a lot of speed, and there's not, you know, you get away with taking that much speed. It's like to have something happen to it, but it was still perfectly controllable. Again, the bushes down the little side road weren't a problem. It does get bounced a bit through the second to last corner. That's not uncommon, as it is a very bumpy corner, and it's flat out around the final turn and flying across the line for the Tamper, and we find a different tree this time to hit. Very few cars have good enough brakes to slow them down once you've crossed that line at the sort of speeds we're going. Yeah, the Tamper was really quite good. I really like this car for driving down Chiliad. Very forgiving, relatively fast car that, yeah, you could get away with pushing the car. Dealt with the bumps incredibly well. The brakes were pretty good as well. We'd get it stopped when things started going a little bit wrong. Yeah, I was really impressed with the Tamper. There's the odd sort of little oversteery traction-related issues that you would probably expect from a muscle car down this course, but yeah, aside from that, a really rather solid off-road car, which I always like to see muscle cars do well. And our final vehicle for the day, one of my favourite cars from GTA 4, the Vapid Uranus. Yeah, I love this car. I always looking for this car in GTA 4. It is, though perhaps slightly surprising, I completely forgot about this, it's actually front-wheel drive, which, you know, you're expecting it to be a Sierra, and it be, you know, front-engine, rear-wheel drive. It isn't. It is front-wheel drive. This is based on, or this is a model for the Blister, which, yeah, quite a lot of cars like to replace the Blister, because it's probably, well, you know, one of the best front-wheel drive cars there is on the game. Yeah, I'd completely forgotten that it was front-wheel drive, so that surprised me a little bit when I went to test this car out. But yeah, I was hoping that it would do well on this first attempt. Got a little carried away over the jump, having been driving the Tamper. I actually just sort of overshot the jump first bit, and then we overshot the next corner as well, trying to get on the brakes a little too late. Clip the rocks. It's a very, very common theme. If you push it a tiny little bit too hard, you might actually make it around the corner that you bounce off the rocks on, but you're probably going to end up in trouble on the next. The next attempt, we actually got the back end of the car up in the air as we went on the brakes, couldn't stop it for turn one, and off we go, tumbling down the mountain, losing bits of car as we go. Turn one is always a tricky one. Here, you've got to brake just before the jump, or most cars you have to brake just before the jump. Some cars you can get away with it, but yeah, most of the time you've got to brake just before the jumps. Front-wheel drive did catch me out as we ran a little bit too wide through a corner. Sort of snapped massively on me as we went round the corner. I was frantically trying to save it, but at that point it was too late. I don't know how many spins. We did 3 or 4 rotations there as we went off the course. Yeah, it was possible to get caught out by being front-wheel drive if you pushed it a little bit too hard. Again, I was pushing it a little too hard on the brakes, trying to brake as late as I dare. Very, very nearly ended up off the cliff. Somehow managed to pull it up just about in time on that particular one. It was a good car under brakes, this one, which is why you see me pushing the car quite a lot. Landing of the jumps, not quite as nice as the Tamper, this one. It did have a tendency to go ever so slightly nose down. I know it was slightly heavy at the front or whatever, but it did have a tendency over the ramps to like to nosedive a little bit. And yeah, we got in trouble, bounced up big time on the landing, and then yeah, you're not saving it. Once you get that much airtime, you're carrying so much speed down that section. If it goes airborne, you're pretty much resigned to your fate. I tried to get away with carrying speed around the hairpin. Again, it was a case of slightly forgetting that it was front-wheel drive and that we're going to get understeer if we booted it there. And yeah, we got understeer, and we ran a little too wide. It does tumble pretty well, this car. Of all the cars, this one here probably had the most tumbling down the mountain, the most spectacular sort of rolls and crashes, falling on. It's just the way the incidents happen. Again, it didn't take me too long. Much like the other cars that I've had in this episode. A pretty easy car to drive in many respects. There wasn't a huge amount of problems with this. I could chuck it through the first section without too much fear. I mean, you did have to be careful with this jump. It's always a tricky section, that one there. You want to carry as much speed as you possibly can, but you get too much airtime over there, and you're probably just going to fire yourself over the mountain. Now, I get a very lucky bounce off a rock through there. Normally you hit that rock, you're in trouble. Get a big two-wheeled moment as well through the next corner. Normally you hit a rock like that, you're going to be in a hell of a lot of trouble. It just flicked the back end of the car the way that I wanted it to go and the way that I was sort of starting to get ready to steer. So we made the most of it. it got us around. Admittedly, it should probably have snapped all of the rear suspension wheel and so on, but we made it around the turn. Again, slowing down, making sure that that we can get through the corner. One thing you will notice, I forgot to say at the start, yeah, with this model, Michael's head does ever so slightly stick out of the top of it. Michael's a little too tall for the for the car, but yeah, never mind about that. Yeah, you might have seen that going down the run as it bounces and bumps its way. It dealt with the bumps pretty well, this car, and not quite as good as the Tamper, but again, we would expect that. This is a little bit of a lower riding car again. Get a neat landing off the fast jump as we fire it down the escape road, and again, these bushes weren't holding too many fears for these cars. We weren't having the horrible issues down that section. Actually carried a little bit too much speed into the second to last corner. Managed to gather it all up though in time as it bounces across the curbs. Round the final corner, we get a bit of an oversteer moment, and we fly through the air, try and get it stopped. It's not going to stop on that particular section. The first car not to hit any trees after crossing the line this episode, but yeah, we weren't going to stop it. Try and climb back up. It's not the best car at sort of off-roading, rock climbing, or climbing back up Chiliad if you fall off. It's quite, yeah, the front wheels tend to just kind of dangle. Very low car with front-wheel drive. It tends to get stuck if you try rock climbing, but certainly going down Chiliad was a pretty, again, another car, nice and relatively easy to drive it around the course. Front wheel drive did catch me out a couple of times, but on the whole, yeah, really not too bad of a vehicle to drive down the course. A fair bit of damage was done to it after we finished. I think I managed to bend up one of the wheels in that finale crash. But on to the times, and all of the cars today were pretty damn close. The Tamper goes the quickest of the lot of them with 129.8, and this is in a very crowded area of the table. You know, the same time as the Chino, the Izzy, and the XL Sand King. The Uranus was only a couple of tenths slower, a 130.1, so pretty much the same time as, you know, as the Virgo, the Sterling, which is again not a bad time for a front-wheel drive car. And the Hakumai a little bit slower, 132.6. I had a few issues with the ride height of that car. I think that was causing, yeah, you had to be a little bit careful through sections, whereas you could certainly throw the Tamper at areas that you couldn't with the Hakumai, and Uranus was a little bit better than the Hakumai when it came to dealing with the bumps. But all three of the cars, I was really impressed. They were all really nice, relatively easy cars to get down this course. Much less stressful doing these three than it was the last lot. They were much more difficult, the Ferrari, and so they were a hell of a lot more difficult to drive down here. Admittedly, the Challenger was quicker than the Hakumai, but I'd much rather drive the Hakumai down Chiliad. Again, the Ferrari was quicker than the Tamper and the Uranus, but it was a hell of a lot more difficult to drive. Anyway, that is it for this video, guys. I'll put a link in the description to all the mods that I've used here so that you can download them, have a go with them yourself. But that is it from me. Thank you very much for watching, and until next time, goodbye.